This is an MS Views and News interview with Lauren Freedman.
Hi.
She is a health coach, patient advocate, and host of the Uninvisible Pod, the podcast about living with chronic invisible illness and disability. Today, we're going to talk about the impact that COVID has been having on the chronic community, or the spooning community, whatever you're going to call it. We're going to talk about all that right now.
Love it.
You're a health coach, a patient advocate, like you got a whole bunch of different things. You don't specifically have MS, but you have like Hashimoto's and like a couple other things that's like, let me support these people.
You want me to run through that for you?
I mean, you don't have to, but it's just the idea of like, yo, we're all kind of in this boat together. And whether or not you have specifically this specific thing, if we are all in the same room, we have some overlap. And that shaded region in that, especially if you're an advocate, especially if you make podcasts, especially if you help bring people together in various worlds together. And it's like, that's why you occupy the space, Lauren Freedman, because you're so great at that.
Oh, you're so sweet, Damian.
But so being someone who has a chronic illness, figuring out not only your way up, but figuring out which way to go toward enriching your life. How has COVID been a catalyst in you figuring out your way around with your chronic condition?
It's been a really interesting time because I know I can speak not only for myself, but also for a lot of the people who I've spoken to on my podcast, right? But the last couple of years have been a time that have been filled with fear and uncertainty. And a lot of us have been trying to navigate this time and this space with as much grace as possible and compassion for ourselves as well as for the people around us, because that's the thing you really learn when
we try, girl, we try.
We are always trying, right? And it's especially hard when you are told constantly that you don't matter, which is the message that we get from a lot of people who are in the general public who maybe have perfectly healthy bodies and aren't as afraid of COVID, or the people who think it's a hoax, that whole set. So it's been a particularly frightening time, and a time in which those of us who already felt invisible because of our invisible symptoms and the invisible manifestations of our conditions have felt overlooked, but additionally overlooked in the sense that, I mean, some of the stories that we've heard about people with disabilities and the elderly, who do we actually save here? And when you are considered a statistic, it makes you feel like your life isn't valued by the people around you. And that can be an incredibly frustrating and sad experience.
So what I'm hearing is that you could have MS. Yeah, you could have Hashimoto's. Yeah, you could have an assortment of chronic conditions. However, the COVID impact on top of all this isolates you even further, puts you not even once removed, like 1,000 times removed on top of the chronic condition that has already removed you from your various communities. So are you just, providing content to help people bring people together? Are you just listening to people in different circles and hearing certain things and then be like, you know what, this is the same, so I'm going to make this? Like, how do you continue to support the chronic community in these times of COVID?
It's a double-edged sword, right? Because the more we talk about COVID, the more we think about it and the more we're living in that fear space. And I've made a conscious effort to include discussion of it in my conversations with guests on my show, but by the same token, to provide content that's specifically not about COVID, that is about a different kind of experience so that we have some relief from it, because it's the only thing in the news. So I don't want to be creating content that is focused entirely on this pandemic, right? So I'm including it in the conversations because it's a reality of living through this time, especially if you're someone living with a disability or chronic illness. And also in the sense that people who are living with long COVID are now members of this community.
Right, so I'm gonna put a pin in that right now. Long COVID, that seems like an autoimmune condition. And a lot of the COVID brain fog symptoms, they overlap with multiple sclerosis brain fog symptoms. And I've seen blog posts and people talking about like, oh yeah, you have brain fog now. Oh yeah, no, this is what I live with. This is what I do. And those people who had not had chronic illness before have gotten the COVID, beat COVID, and been like, whoa, your brain is like this 24/7, man. What's going on? And so that does shed some light, if you don't have the chronic condition, to like, what people around you who might have chronic conditions are dealing with. So this COVID thing has made a shared space, if it were. Do you agree with that? Or
I think in some ways it's leveled the playing field for those who unfortunately have ended up with long COVID symptoms. And I really hope that they're able to find a way through it. But this community already exists for the rest of us who are living with invisible chronic illness. And so we welcome people who want to find additional community and really commiserate with others who might be experiencing similar symptoms. And what you mentioned is so interesting because so many of us have symptoms that overlap despite our very disparate diagnoses. And being able to meet in that shared space is what creates community. And so, being able to provide that kind of support and community, not only for people who are dealing with long COVID, but also for those of us who are really afraid of COVID and afraid of the people around us who may not be taking our needs seriously, or, just moving through the world during a time like this. So a lot of it for me has just been about getting even deeper into these conversations about identity and really understanding how much of our diagnosis indicates who we are, how much of our diagnosis defines who we are, versus allowing it to be a part of our story, and allowing us to be in community and to find common ground in all of that.
It's funny because like finding the balance between life with the disease, your life with the condition, and the condition and your life is really what our work is. It's why you have a podcast. It's why I'm talking to the camera for this community for years.
So because everyone knows we're talking to them.
No, I just mean the idea of, hey, I'm going to show up in this space. Hey, I'm going to be here. Hey, I know COVID has you trapped in. Hey, I know COVID has you seeing less people. Therefore, I am going to be more regular with my posts. Therefore, I am going to bring other people with autoimmune conditions to speak about their things. And maybe it can put put a tiger in your tank? Like, I don't know what
I haven't heard that. I like that.
I mean, that also shows how, not young I am in many regards. But the idea of having a space with each other, for each other, because the world is sick now. And because we have our own conditions, we know a little bit of what that is like and what that is about. And finding the middle is really what it's really been about, at least for me, and from what I'm seeing around me, finding the middle ground to help open up some shared common spaces. And that's where people grow, and that's where people love, and that's where people find new life, especially if it's been taken away from them. Because of multiple sclerosis.
Exactly. Or in my case, because of Hashimoto's and sleep disorders.
Okay. Etc.
And in fostering that compassion for ourselves, my hope is that those who maybe aren't in this community will be able to extend their compassion to us and see us, because that's what we're asking, to be seen and heard. And that's exactly why you and I create the content that we create. And especially at a time like this, I remember when the pandemic first came to the US a couple years ago now, and you would hear from people, well, I just want to get COVID and get it over with. And it was such a callous thing to hear, because I thought, you're saying that from such a place of privilege, that you've never had your body fail you and had to learn from those tough experiences. But those of us in this community have already done that. So the other thing is that, like, we had a leg up on isolation, and on how to navigate dealing with germs in the world. But it doesn't make it any less lonely. And it's why the importance of things like video communication and phone communication are so much more important to us at times like this. And thank goodness we have access to things like Zoom, even despite the Zoom fatigue that I know many of us are feeling, but like just that being seen, being heard, being understood, being acknowledged.
That's kind of what it is. Finding that there's no term for this. I figured this out. Like the shaded region of a Venn diagram. Yeah. It's only called the shaded region. It's not like the meniscus or something like that. I would love to have a term for it.
Shall we name it something?
I don't know what a fancy dress. I want to do it. I want to give it a proper name. But bottom line, COVID has taken a regular person who not even taking things for granted. We're not even thinking about these sorts of things, and we're going, forward. Just like in a lot of ways, me or you or someone else who's just living their life, and now they have to deal with this condition. Oh wait, in this condition. Oh wait, what? And it transforms you. And so because the world now has a condition that it has to look out for, because it will transform you, it levels the playing field. It enlarges the shaded region of the Venn diagram of I'm a person with a condition, a medical condition.
Yeah.
And that shaded region is understanding and compassion. And like, yo, I got you, fam. I'm gonna be here for you. Whether or not I'm making entertainment for you, I'm making content for you, or I'm just listening to you.
And in it with you. It's interesting too, because there's been a very fine balance between those of us who really feel the need to continue to isolate and to communicate only virtually. Correct. Versus those of us who are recognizing the impact that the isolation is having on our mental health. And we know studies have shown that isolation and lack of community can cause as many bad health issues as actually getting sick, right? So, this balance between going like, is it worth taking the risk and being around more people versus staying at home? And I think part of that has to do with how extroverted or introverted one might be.
Right.
And the other part of it has to do with maybe how strong your community is where you live.
Boom.
And so a lot of us have had to learn to reach out in new ways, and to learn how to ask for what we want and need in much more urgent manners as well. And it can be a very rewarding experience when you get there, but it's a long road to get to that place where you have to tell your close friends and other people around you, this is absolutely what I need. And, it can be challenging.
It's like, it takes time. Like it takes like 2-3 years for you to like go through all your stuff, like, and to be like, okay, fine, this is what it is. This is how I am comfortable showing up in public with this COVID. This is how I'm comfortable taking care of my needs so I can show up in public, because I have MS, I have Hashimoto's, I have like whatever. So I know I need to figure out my own thing. Plus I need to figure out my own COVID thing. Plus I'm a human social animal. I can't be isolated or quarantined until this thing is over. This thing has been going on for 2.5 years, friend. So,
but people have been, and that's the thing, is like understanding that there have been people who have been in their bedrooms or in their homes for 2 years now. And, we need to be thinking about them in all of the actions that we take, in the ways that we move through the world. And the sooner we sort of get this thing under control, the sooner they'll be able to come back out into the light. And so, really considering those who are most in need when we're going through something as a collective is a big part of the lesson here. And I don't think everyone's getting the lesson.
Right. Well, that's even like kind of the next thing. It's this whole COVID thing is leveling the playing field. What's something else that you have noticed out here, since you are out here on the scene talking to people with different conditions, plus COVID, and how that is changing your audience, your demographic, your everything, other than isolation and having everyone else know what it's like? Is there some other things that you have noticed in this?
The vaccination question.
Woo!
This is a big one, right? Because there are many of us in this community who have hyper reactive immune systems and maybe don't have a specific anaphylactic reaction to any of the ingredients in any of the vaccinations, but might have enough of a reaction to a vaccine that while a legal exemption may not be available, some people have thus far opted out because they're too afraid
don't
something worse could happen. Right. And also that, this could cause a flare. And I know that there have been studies of autoimmune populations, for example, and spoony populations in the creations of the vaccines. But given the anecdotal evidence that I've sort of picked up in my various interviews, what I would say is that a lot of us, and I don't want to say this to create any fear mongering, because I do believe that, if you can get the vaccine, it's probably worth it. And I myself have been vaccinated, but I'm in that question of, do I get the booster now? Because I spent the last 8 months in sort of a very long, low level flare. And also my period is still not regular.
Right.
So, the impact on women's bodies, or those who identify as female, and what it's been doing to our hormones, not necessarily our reproductive systems, because we know that studies have shown that it is safe for our reproductive systems. And I trust these studies, but balancing the science with what our personal experience is, and also, when we don't exactly know the outcome, because everyone's having different reactions, and there's nothing set in stone.
Well, I heard this. Well, my cousin this. Well, I haven't seen this thing that I read. It's like, yo, fam.
Which is not helpful, right?
Nah.
Like that is not. And everyone says, well, I need to do my research. Well, the research is there.
It's there, fam.
You're not an MD. If you're not an MD, and certainly we want to be.
You can read the research that's there.
And we want to be trusting reputable sources and learning how to think critically when it comes to doing our own research, which is itself, semi-problematic in its concept. But, there's a proliferation of information on social media and all this kind of thing. But just anecdotally, there have been mixed reactions to the vaccines. And I myself have had my issues. And while I am glad I got the vaccines, because it makes me feel a hell of a lot safer, that's where I'm wondering about the booster now, because I've said to myself, until my period's regular,
right,
I want to wait. And I'm someone who used to be able to set a clock by my cycle.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to do that for 8 months. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out one's way forward in society, in the world, plus one's way forward with the condition.
I've got some answers.
Okay, so give it to me then.
Study more women.
Boom.
And study more diverse populations, study more BIPOC communities, and study people who are living with chronic illness and disability. Include more of these people in the studies, because most of the studies that we have out there, even when it comes to just tissue samples, come from male tissue. And if they're human subjects, they're usually white males. And often, the populations being studied are college kids, because they need the money, right? So what happens when you're in your 40s? So
it don't work the same, trust me. I'm following.
Right. So diversifying the way that we study, and the way that we include the entire population in our research is really the key here, right? But all of that starts with education, systemically speaking. But I think that's the solution, is to do more studies and include more people who have not heretofore really been included or considered.
See, this is why I hang out with this person, because she understands the things that a spoonie or someone who's living with a chronic condition understands, and how they view the world. 1, 2, she also sees the world that's looking back at her. She wants to do something different with it so that it works better for her, better for me,
better for all of us
all. And that's something that really only happens when you have insight into something. And frankly, you only have insight into something because you have the thing. I'm only on MS Views and News because I have MS.
You have the thing.
I have the thing. It's very interesting how you're not even weighing, but just taking all of these different components and spinning them all into one. And this is what's going on, friend. And you're being present for people in the space, just like all of us advocates who make content are. So respect and peace, and thank you. And
thank you.
Where can people go to find Uninvisible Pod, find Lauren Freedman being fabulous? Hello, go ahead.
Well, you can go to my website, uninvisiblepod.com. That's always a great place to start. Otherwise, you can follow me on social at Uninvisible Pod, and I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the things. And
do it, y'all. You can tell she know. You can tell she know. Look at her. Okay.
And if you're on Instagram, go on my link tree. You can sign up for the email list. You can email me, all those things. So yeah.
The community and togetherness of having chronic conditions, and then fostering the togetherness between people who just hurt.
Just include us. That's all we've been asking for all this time, is to be included. And that's the work that you and I are trying to do, and right, we're doing it specifically with story, and learning about people's individual stories. Everyone has their own way in, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to be seen and heard and believed. And that goes with the COVID situation as well, and this is a really scary, tough time to be living through, especially if you're immune compromised. And we're here for this community. We're here for everyone. And we just need a wider acceptance of our existence.
This is true. Like Lauren Freedman, champion, scholar, fabulous person. Thank you for joining us here on MS Views Now. And thank you guys for tuning in. And we will catch you another time on another MS Views Now. Thanks, folks.
Thanks.